Hello, welcome back to Expanded Knowledge. Today, we have an interesting topic that we're going to be looking at, and this has to do with the upcoming UFO UAP hearings that have been stated as confirmed for November 13th, 2024. This is in 2 weeks. And yes, there's allegedly supposed to be new whistleblowers with firsthand experience on the alleged UFO crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs, as well as the broader cover up and secrecy about the truth about UFOs. And so today's video is actually pretty interesting because what we're going to be looking at is the upcoming UFO hearing in perspective. Comments from Congress in 1959. Yes. Now, it's pretty interesting and spontaneous and organic of how this topic came up for me to be compelled to put together this brief presentation and make this video to share. And that is that I was reading this magazine, okay? I ordered this magazine, Flying Saucers magazine. This was a popular UFO magazine in the 50s and into the 60s. And the reason I ordered it is for other research that I'm doing on some different topics. And I needed to read an article from this, not the one that I'm going to share with you today. It was something different. And this was not anywhere online available digitally. So I had to order the hard copy. I dug around and found a hard copy for sale. And I just got this in the mail today. And so I open it. And as I'm going to go read the article I read it for, and by the way, this is the February 1960 edition. But as I'm flipping to go read my article, I see this article jump out. And it was titled, Senators Want Saucer Truth. As you can see in the screenshot there, pressing for flying saucer inquiry. Okay? And what this was a reproduction of comments made on the House, the U.S. House of Representatives congressional floor by an individual named Honorary Edgar W. Heistand. And he presented this information to Congress, to the House of Representatives on July 15th, 1959. Okay? 65 years ago. And as the article tells us, as you see in my second bullet point there in quotes, a decision on hearings is still pending. So here they were in 1959 pushing for congressional hearings. And here we are 65 years later with this one coming up in 2 weeks, which is being kind of advertised as being something that's going to significantly move things forward. Obviously, last year's with David Grusch did that. This would be for it to move forward. This would need to be more, firsthand information from people that were involved with the alleged programs. So anyway, in this video, we are going to look at the quotes because what's so interesting about this brief article is it basically just prints a series of quotations from senators and representatives that were active at this time in 1959, and they gave their comments to this one journalist named George Tott of North Hollywood Valley Times. And this is what was presented on the House floor in 1959. All right. So look at what was being said here. Okay. This is from Stuart Simington, who was the first Secretary of the Air Force from 1947 to 1950, and then was a senator from 53 to 76. So, first Secretary of the Air Force from the beginning of 1947, right? The beginning of the flying saucer waves, that critical first 3 years, he was a Secretary of the Air Force who would go on to be Project Blue Book and go on to really be what all evidence points to as being a central body to the secrecy around UFOs and whatever it is that is actually known. So here's his quote. Simington says, "There is little doubt that the American public has sound reason for being confused about the existence and nature of these phenomena. I am certain it would be in the interest of public understanding if a current and objective evaluation of this situation were issued. And what I'll highlight there is just the fact that here he is saying in 1959, oh, like assuming there is an existence and nature of the flying saucer UFO phenomenon, and saying, a current and objective evaluation of this situation. So, he's saying there was a situation, right? And we could go to more and more documents. I always cite the Nathan Twining memo from 1947. They already knew that they were real. People were really seeing these flying discs. I mean, that was their assessment. I wasn't there, I didn't see them, so I can't give you 100%, right? But going off of the declassified documents, they were completely concluded by 1947 that the so-called flying saucers, flying discs, were absolutely physical objects being seen by people, many of them highly credible people. All right. We get on to Senator George Smathers of Florida, who mildly puts, quote, "The subject of flying saucers is one in which we all share a great interest." Sure, okay, but interesting to see that in 1959, 65 years ago, this was something that they were very interested in the Senate. And then you have Senator Barry Goldwater from Arizona, quote, "Flying saucers, unidentified flying objects, or whatever you call them, are real. The Air Force has a project to investigate these reports, but when you ask about them, they clam up." Okay, so showing you in 59 here that, a high ranking senator was already concluded that the saucers were real and that the Air Force would not share information about what was going on. Okay, then you have Senator Leverett B. Saltonstall of Massachusetts. And he says, quote, "As a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, this is a problem in which I am deeply interested. We must consider the genuine security necessities, as I'm sure you appreciate, but I think there are many cases in which more information should be made available to the public." Doesn't this sound familiar to the comments that we get now from people in the Senate Intelligence Committees, the people being briefed about Grusch's claims and so forth? It sounds so similar 65 years ago. Okay, and so Saltonstall here, he was on the Senate Armed Services Committee, who would be informed on some things like this. And so, judging by his comments, he's implying that he was briefed on certain information. And he's saying the same thing, right? Like, we have to consider national security, like everyone says. But there's many cases in which more information should be made available, implying that information was being withheld in 1959 about what they knew that he thought that could be shared. And we hear the same things today. Moving on to Representative Dante B. Fcel of Florida, he says, quote, "There are many areas where unrealistic policy keeps vital information from the American people. Certainly, accurate information concerning so-called unidentified flying objects within the proper balance of national security should be made available immediately to the American public," echoing that same sentiment, right? That things are being kept secret about it. Again, already confirming and implying that there's a reality to the situation of the UFOs and the saucers, and saying again, as long as it's in balance with national security, people should be more informed. Okay, 1959. And then we move on to Representative Fred Marshall of Minnesota, who said, quote, "There has been growing interest in the release of military information on unidentified flying objects. The subject has been discussed with appropriate committees of the Congress." So here we're getting confirmation that information about the UFOs was being shared with the, quote, "appropriate committees of the Congress," which we know means the intelligence committees and the armed services committees primarily. Moving along to Representative William HIR of Ohio. I think this is one of the more significant ones, I think. He says, quote, "Congressional investigations have been held and are still being held on the problems of unidentified flying objects. Since most of the material presented to the committee is classified, the hearings are never printed. When conclusions are reached, they will be released if possible." So here in 1959, we have confirmation that Congress was investigating the UFO issue 65 years ago, and they were getting briefings, but the briefings were behind closed doors and classified, just like we still hear being talked about now. And so the information's not being shared. And then his last sentence, he's basically just saying information will be released if possible. Okay, so this has been going on a long, long time, clearly. And the last person to comment was a congressman that did not want to be named in the article. But the statement he gave was, quote, "The public is not getting the straight story. We, parentheses, members of Congress," that was an error in my dictation. I should have edited that there. It just means when he's saying we, he's talking about members of Congress. We are told one thing in closed door sessions. Then the public is told something entirely different. The same type of things that we've been hearing the last year, 2 years, after Grusch and so forth, and even before that, with the UAP task force and so forth. Being told something behind closed door sessions, and then the public's being told something different. What were they being told in 1959? What would lead these government officials to be saying this in 1959, that the public's not getting the straight story? What is the straight story? What was the straight story? This was 65 years ago. What's been going on since then? My goodness, you know? And so I just thought that this was really interesting and putting things in perspective for the hearing that's coming up, because especially for us that were not around in 1959. And, to us, this is exciting, and this is like, wow, we're so close to there. And yes, albeit there was no whistleblower in 59, saying going through the process and saying what great David Grusch said and so forth, nor were there pilots testifying before Congress like Graves and Fravor. So yes, it is different. And we've had another 65 years of this going on. So it is a different context, but still, look at what was going on, the same kind of things and patterns and words and commentary being made by U.S. government officials, 65 years ago. And so we're not done yet, actually. We have a few more. Okay, these all lead into each other. Next up, we have Representative Thomas L. Ashley of Ohio. And these get better as we go along, if I remember how I organized them correctly. Ashley says, quote, "I share your concern over the secrecy that continues to shroud our intelligence activities on this subject. And I am in complete agreement with you that our greatest national need at this time is the dissemination of accurate information upon which responsible public opinion can be formulated." Well, there you have it. What intelligence activities on the UFO subject? What did that entail in 1959? And this representative went as far as saying it's our greatest national need to share the information with the public. Interesting. What might he have known? Moving on to Representative Ralph J. Scott of North Carolina, he says, quote, "I quite agree with you that the general public should be allowed information thus far known about flying objects. If this information could be presented to the American public in such a way as to appeal to reason and not to emotion, I think it would be a good thing." Now, this one really resonated with me, and especially in relation to the hearings coming up in 2 weeks. Is that, first of all, again, he's saying what is known about UFOs should be shared with the public, implying that he knew what was known and in his opinion that it should be shared, okay, which is interesting in itself. But then to go on to say what he says at the end there, right? It should be presented to the public in a way to appeal to reason and not to emotion, okay? And I think he was very prudent to make that distinction. Yes, that's important, right? Because if we come out leading with the emotion, fear, right, shock, whatever it is, that's probably not going to be like the best way, right? There will be more problems with that in the public reaction. But if we come from a way with reason, right, presenting it logically, carefully, in a manner that's transparent, then I think that's the way to go. I think Representative Scott was ahead of his time there, 1959. Then we move on to Representative Walter H. Mohler of Ohio, who says, quote, "I have every confidence that the American people would be able to take such information without hysteria. The fear of the unknown is always greater than the fear of the known." And this one also resonated with me, especially that last sentence. Um, and it's this whole concept, right, of like, has the secrecy been, I think there's many reasons for the secrecy, as there usually are many reasons and causes for things. It's very rarely one reason or cause, but is one of the main reasons because of the fear of the public panic. Probably, right? But then we don't really know, like, would the public really panic? And we've had people, leaders in the government, for example, say the people could handle it. You hear Burchett say that now, the people can handle the truth. Um, and I don't know, like I that resonates with me. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's go. But the key is like that it's actually the truth and not some manipulated agenda to release the information they want to release and then still control what's really going on. Um, but that last quote is so, I think, is so, prudent. The fear of the unknown is always greater than the fear of the known, right? So maybe that's true. Maybe the fear of what it could be, instead of just knowing what we already know. Clearly, it's been around for 80 years, so it can't be that shocking in terms of, the planet getting blown up by some enemy aliens or something like that, or whatever kind of fear, um, angle you could take on it. And I'm not saying that there isn't possibly a threat or there isn't some malevolent activity that's gone on. But like I always say when I'm asked this question, there's a lot of there's a lot of malevolent activity and threats coming from our own species of human beings on a daily basis for thousands of years up until today. So, that just seems to be the way of our planet here. And maybe disclosing this information could help ameliorate that. All right, something to think about. Now, and that's it for these members of Congress that gave these quotations in 1959, and 65 years later, here we are. It's the UAP Caucus, as it's been called, on the right there. But of course, there are many others who have spoken on this. Senator Rubio, Senator Schumer, many other senators, actually. Almost as much as 20 people from modern times have made comments to the press about what's going on, what they think is going on, and their view about it, and about public disclosure of information. And so here we are. So what do we take from this? Here's what I think, and this is what it made me reflect on today, is like, we got this hearing coming up in 2 weeks. Here we are, 65 years later. We just read what they were all saying back then. And so, like, will the secrecy end? Will this be the beginning of the end of this secrecy? I mean, it's so crazy that this has been going on and that nobody cares about it. It's like, it's so fascinating to me, but that's what makes me think, right? To my second bullet point. Will someone like I am now, and we are here, be looking back at this and what was being said these last couple years in this hearing, and be looking back at it the same way 65 years from now? Imagine the readers of Flying Saucers magazine back in 59, and imagine these high-ranking members of the government back in 59 pushing for public hearings, pushing for disclosure to the public about UFOs. They probably didn't think it would be 65 more years of secrecy, of virtually nothing else being, shared with the public about what they know about these objects and the greater phenomenon, as we call it. So, yeah, it's like, it's interesting to think about, because I sit here, and I'm 36 years old, so 65 years from now, I mean, I'd be lucky to be alive still. And here we all are sitting here in this boat, like, wow, are we are we really on the brink of like knowing what all this is? And potentially like just a paradigm shifting moment in human history? It's right around the corner. Literally, it's 2 weeks away, Um, or can they just keep kicking the can down the road? Because the evidence is overwhelming, guys, and I don't know where you're at with this, but um, I could argue this in any kind of a setting. Just have to gather up my evidence and have it ready to reference. But it's very clear that there is something to this phenomenon that is real, that is physical, and that is being kept secret from public knowledge. I mean, it's just overwhelming, the body of evidence. What it is, we're left to conjecture with the information we have. But we can at least conclude that at some level of our government, more is known, more can be concluded as being factual about this phenomenon that is not being shared. And of course, we have the most recent person coming forward to say what this may be all about, claiming, pretty tantalizing things. And I'm talking about David Grusch, of course, and the fact that he said that they've been recovering these craft and reverse engineering them, and also been carrying out a disinformation campaign against the American people that's unethical and immoral, and so forth. And he's not sure if there's been agreements with other groups. Of course, what I always say, if you watch my channel, is the other side to that we can't miss out on is simplifying it and saying, oh, it's all aliens, right? It's all non-human intelligence. When the other side that they might wish to keep secret even longer, sure, we can say that there's beings out there and the UFOs are coming from somewhere far away and they can manage that. I'm saying potentially, right? Whereas like if they have their own in these, top secret underground bases and all of this covert black ops, special access programs and reverse engineering, right? Which is part of the claims. Like, do we have our own? Was part of the secrecy back in 1959 that they were, as Senator Goldwater said, they would clam up and they didn't want anyone knowing about? Is it because we had our own? And it was such a revolutionary form of propulsion and energy that could be used for weaponry that they thought that this had to be the biggest secret, had to keep the tightest lid on it. I mean, it's plausible. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't tell, I don't know because I'm not privy to conclusive evidence that would give the full story of this. I think very few people probably are, if anyone. All to say, all right, let's close it out on my last bullet point here. This is just a thought. Okay, thinking about like, will this be us in 65 years, or will someone be doing what we're doing now in 65 years about this, about where we are right now? And it's just a thought, and it's that maybe more public activism may be necessary to make progress. Because it seems like they were where we are at, uh, albeit a different context, but basically at the same place 65 years ago on this topic. And virtually nothing's changed except in the last, couple of years. Maybe you want to call it the last since 2017. All right. Still. And so maybe people just need to wake up more. People just need to talk about this. I mean, I get it that like it makes people uncomfortable, but like, I don't know. And I'm just sharing my opinion on the fly right now, but like, I think we maybe just got to grow up. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it's just time to grow up. Um, do we really think that, number one, 400 billion galaxies with like 400 billion stars in each one of what we can even see, there it could even be infinite galaxies, and that we're the only physical, you know, beings or whatever, material beings, even if you want to talk about other dimensions and stuff. Yes, we don't even understand if that's possible or whatnot. We're the only ones that have a mind like this and language and can like influence the physical world. I mean, it's crazy, right? To just assume that. Maybe we need to grow up and just accept it. Aside from the fact that, okay, even if there wasn't any aliens or non-human intelligence, like something is flying these things around. And I think in my own personal conclusion so far, in my own UFO research, is that I do think that there's special access, covert, black budget programs that, yes, have had some degree of success with these, flying discs and other shapes and types of exotic propulsion and aircraft, and it's been kept under the tightest wraps. There's different plausible reasons as to why, and I'm not going to get into that here. But my point is just that more people should talk about this. I mean, like I said before, the evidence is overwhelming that there is something real going on here, and we deserve to know. Okay, it's been 80 years at least, and we deserve to know. But maybe, like I say in my last point here, people need to just care about it more, because us here in the UFO community, yeah, we're interested in it, right? We have our niche here on YouTube and wherever else. But if you went and did the research, I'm sure the surveys or polls, it's a very small percentage of people that are actively interested and actually up to date about what's going on with this in the government. I try to talk to people about it. Smart people, friends, peers, even students, college students. You would be fascinated. I'm very hesitant to bring up this subject at the college because it still has that stigma, even to a younger generation. I would say of a class of 20 students, I would say that maybe like five-ish like get it, you know what I mean? And they've seen enough that they know something's going on, and they're open and they're receptive to the information. And I would say the other 15, so what's that? That's like 80%, right? Uh, are like, they don't want to hear it. And even one of the students, right? For the first time, actually, I openly spoke about this topic like a few weeks ago in one of my classes. And I shared with them all the information. None of them had heard anything about it. David Grusch, everything. The movement in the government, the hearing coming up. None of them had heard anything about it. And it was almost just like a lukewarm reception. And then one student, after the class ended, said, there was a few students that hung around, right? And I'm like, so you guys all think I'm crazy now, because I talk about UFOs. And they were like, no, we don't think you're crazy. And then one of them, who's one of the brighter students in the class, participates a lot. He said, "You've given me something to kill some time with and to entertain myself this weekend." Haha, you know. And I'm like, so that's how it registered, like some kind of like frivolous thing to like entertain yourself with, not like a very serious issue that would completely change our whole reality and potentially the whole way that we're living on the planet, and the powers that are, suppressing information and controlling the masses, and have been for a long time. Which again is just what's going on. You know what I mean? You don't need to wrap it up into like a conspiracy theory, as we call it, and some like Illuminati thing, which just then and everyone dismisses that, right? But I mean, look, the most powerful people that have the most power, they're just controlling things, and the vast majority of the rest of us aren't. And this includes information about flying objects that defy anything that we know of our current physics, as Commander David Fravor said in the hearing last year, and much, much more, right? As David Grusch has said, people being harmed and even killed for to keep information about this secret. So there's something very big going on, obviously, and we could cite a laundry list of further evidence to support that conclusion. And this student, right? And I'll share this last part with you before we wrap it up here. A week or two later, I saw the student at the end of class. He was asking me a question about something, and I said, "Did you ever get a chance to read more about David Grusch and the UAP issue going on right now?" And he laughed and uh, he said, "No, no, I just had way too many other things come up that just were more important. That I wasn't able to get around to it. I'll let you know if I do. Let you know if I do." You know, and that really just hit me a certain way because it was like, man, and this is like a bright student who is seems to be interested in learning about things, and that it's relegated to that, even with all the information about what's going on. So, all to say, damn, like this hearing better slash should slash hopefully will wake up the public to be like, there is something here, guys. Like, can't you see it? Even though we had, a dozen government, high government officials telling us that 65 years ago and more, 80 years ago. But for one reason or another, the public just doesn't care about this. And I think as technology has changed, people are more distracted now, and we have social media and all that now, and there's a lot of things to distract people now. In some ways, maybe people were more kind of open to thinking about things objectively, like the flying saucers back in 1959. I don't know. But maybe if people took more active interest in this, more journalists would cover it. For goodness sake, that could make such a big difference. More big level people would talk about it. If some celebrities would talk about it, if some famous people would wake up, sorry to use that generic term here, but would just wake up and realize what's going on and use their prominence to talk about this and bring public attention to it. I think if public attention could be brought up significantly, the push or the pressure for this would happen, and then we wouldn't be having the same people sitting in our shoes right now 65 years from now looking back going, damn, it's been 200 years now, right? It's been 160 years. So let's see what happens. And I think it starts on a micro level. All right. And I'll wrap it up now and get off my soapbox here. But I think it starts on a micro level, meaning it starts with you. It starts with those conversations with your friends, with your family, with whatever your network is. Maybe we just need to talk about it more. You know what I mean? And it's hard to, because you're going to be still, even today, looked at as, the tinfoil hat person or the annoying person that brings up the uncomfortable stories. You might even lose friends from it, which, sad to say, I have. Not that I've lost a friend, but I've certainly had a very close friend that has, become more distant. And it may just be a coincidence, but I noticed that after I brought this subject up and shared everything about that I have learned about it, and this friend was just not there. And I think maybe he thought that I was losing it. But I hope that this November 13th hearing brings some nice concrete information. I hope that the media covers it well, and I hope people start caring about this more. And it starts with all of us. So now I will conclude this video, and let's see what happens in the hearing. In my next video that I want to do, actually, I want to show you how I think it's almost conclusive based on the primary source evidence that I'm going to show you, that the highest levels of the government and the military of the United States in 1947, in August of 1947, already knew what the UFOs were. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you again for watching. And I will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.